All right, welcome everybody to the Cat Dad Show. I'm your host, Scott Colby. And now, most of us who own cats, myself included, we have trouble getting our cats to ride comfortably in the car, right? Like when we take them to the vet, because they're anxious and it's stressful for both the cat and the cat parent. Well, today we're going to be talking to Kathy Davis, an entrepreneur and author who actually travels the US full time with her husband and two cats, Archie and Eddie. We're going to talk all about their experiences and safety when it comes to traveling with their cat. So it's going to be a fun show. Kathy, welcome to the Cat Dad Show.
Thanks, Scott, for having me. I'm really excited to be here and share our cat experiences.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the audience, they don't want to know about us. So let's dig in and talk about cats. So, how do you make sure, your cats are Eddie and Archie. So, how do you make sure that Eddie and Archie feel comfortable and safe when you're on the move in your RV? Because I know that could be stressful for some cats. So, what are some of the things that you do to make them feel comfortable?
Definitely. So our RV is actually a fifth wheel with a tow. We tow with a truck. And so we move them from the RV and keep them in the truck with us while we are traveling. So that gives them some safety. They're both in their carriers, which gives them their own space, their own blankets, their own toys. And also, what we've found is if we leave the carriers out when we are parked, they're more likely to be comfortable in them when we're traveling. We lived in a house before we went full time in the RV, and we used to chase our cats around the house trying to get them into the carrier for the vet appointments. And I was just making sure
I'll say
nobody
that
heard
word.
me. um, and it was, we wanted to make it safe when we moved into the RV. So we started leaving the carriers out and they actually sleep in them. So that's been one really big tip that we picked up is just making that a familiar place that they can be and sleep all the time and not having it be a scary place that they have to go.
Yeah. So, I know you started with Eddie. How old is Eddie?
Eddie is 11 and he actually had two cat brothers, Murphy and Scooter, when we first hit the road 6 years ago. So we had three cats when we first hit the road.
You had 3 cats. Okay. So walk me back to that time and, because for me, like I revolve my life around my cats. So I would probably have the mindset of like, well, I can't take my cats on the road full time because they're cats and they like stability and security. And so my mindset always goes to like, nah, that's not going to work. What was your thinking back kind of 6 years ago when maybe you and your husband were just thinking about this? And how did you get to the point where you actually pulled the trigger and did it?
Well, we were actually a little nervous about it, especially because of the cats. But one of the reasons that we did it was so that we could travel and not leave the cats at home with a pet sitter all the time.
Mm,
We really like to go to different cities and places and explore. And we just found that we were always packing ourselves up and leaving the cats because taking them to new places isn't always the most fun for them. So the RV gives them the same place, that stability every time we move and then park. So when we were looking at RV full time, we figured, okay, if we get an RV that has enough space, that they have, their own spaces, they have little nooks, they're together all the time,
mm,
and they were with us because when we moved into the RV, we'd be working remotely in the RV all day long. So we feel like that transition of them being with us in the RV all day long really helped move them from a house into this much smaller space.
yeah. What would you say has been maybe like the biggest challenge you've faced while traveling full time with your cats? And then how did you overcome that challenge?
There's been a couple big challenges. One big challenge is vet care.
Mm,
So, our two older cats, Scooter and Murphy, both were older. They were about 10 or 11 when we hit the road. And so they developed illnesses as they aged. Scooter had chronic kidney disease. And so we had, you know, we actually had a mobile vet come to the RV and do some care for him, run some blood work. And so you're not always near your home vet, you're not near your registered vet, so you have to use a different doctor, you have to be willing to trust other people, and that's not always easy. And then the outcome of that was giving Scooter subcutaneous fluids. And so now we are performing like medical care for our cat in the RV on the kitchen counter. And so that was one challenge. And then the other challenge I would say is, you know, really for us, it was, I don't know, I guess we wanted them to explore with us. We wanted them to feel comfortable going outside. And our first three cats, Scooter, Murphy, and Eddie, have not really been those exploration cats. You know, they lived a really cushy, bougie life in our townhouse when we lived in our townhouse. And so they'd go out on the deck. They want to be outside, but then outside at these new campgrounds can be very different, a new area, new smells. And so they didn't love it necessarily. But they were okay on a leash, right? Like we could leash them, we could bring them outside with us. They wanted to be there, but then if people came, they would run back toward the door. Archie, on the other hand, because we got him as a kitten, he has been very fun to take. He is the hit of the campground. He will walk on a leash. He will ride in a backpack. I mean, he is the ultimate adventure cat. And so that's been really fun over this last year with him is really being able to get him outside. Now, Eddie's the complete opposite. He will sit in the doorway and look at you outside and ask to come out. He'll do his little meows. But then when you take him out, if he sees somebody, he's right back up to the screen door, ready to go in.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit more how you adopted Archie on the road, but I want to kind of circle back to the vet care, because I know that might be important for people listening who may want to try this. And that would probably be one of my concerns because, you know, with my home vet, right, I trust them and I love how much they love my cats. And I just feel like I'm in good hands with them. When you're traveling and needed vet care, how did you actually go about vetting a vet, I guess, finding a new vet that you felt like you'd be comfortable with to take care of your cats, especially as they had kidney disease, or one of them did?
Right. It was actually really, it wasn't so much hard. I mean, we found a mobile vet the first time with Scooter. We found a mobile vet, and then as his illness kind of worsened, and we, you know, because we move on, right? We were in Arizona when we got the mobile vet, but then we were traveling and he was not responding to the treatments. It was about 6 months after. So then we had to take him to a vet. And that's hard because you're taking one and leaving the others. He came back, they hiss, like it really does. And I'm sure people living in a house, if you have more than one cat, you've experienced this, even if they're in your own house, like you take them to a vet and now they smell funny, and the other cats are like, whoa, you smell like that place we don't like to go. We're not gonna be buddies right now. And so that was really hard. And then when we lost Scooter, we lost him in the RV, and we had to then find a place that would, you know, do aftercare so that we could get his ashes back. And so that was also a big challenge. But as far as the vets that we've seen, we've been really fortunate. We read a lot of reviews. You know, we take the reviews with a grain of salt. Like not everybody's happy with everybody, but we look for, you know, do they care for these people's pets? Do they have good reviews that speak to, you know, the quality of care that they give? And do the reviews seem trustable? And then with Murphy's illness was really quick. The whole process was quick. He had hyperthyroidism, so he was on medication. He had a heart murmur, and we took him into a vet in one of our favorite places, and their local vet. And they had good reviews. You know, we needed to get him seen, that we didn't like what was happening with him. And so they did great. They were really helpful, but then they went on vacation, and then we had more issues, and we had to take him to another vet. And so, you know, that I would say the vet care really can be a challenge, because you are moving and you are subject to, you know, availability and where's the nearest emergency vet. Like when we lived at home, we knew where the nearest emergency vet was. We knew all of that. And when you're traveling, you don't always know that. I will say though, when we're driving into a new town, I'm always aware of the local emergency vets, and campgrounds are really helpful as well. You know, sometimes the people that run the campgrounds live there, they have their own pets, so they can be a really good resource as well. And then there's lots of Facebook groups and communities of RV travelers that can also, provide help.
Mm.
We had to take Eddie in for a tooth cleaning last September, just before we got, it was like the month before we got Archie. We had to take him in, and we'd only had Eddie at that point, and so we didn't even go back to the RV. We stayed. We took him to the nearest vet that was like an hour away, and we stayed there because that vet had good reviews. We stayed in town and worked at a coffee shop until we could get him back and pick him up, because we didn't want to go back to the RV with no cats.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing, and sorry for your losses. I've
Mm.
experienced 2 losses as well, and I know it's very difficult and kind of similar. One had kidney disease, and then she developed other illnesses, and one
Mhm.
kind of was a lot quicker. And his regular vet was actually on vacation when he passed away. So I understand kind of what you're going through. And I kind of other thing I was chuckling about, when you first go to a new location, you might be looking at what your vet options are right away. And I know people when they travel and they're at conferences or something, they're looking for where's the nearest Whole
Whole
Foods?
Foods, yeah. Well, I look for
Like,
the nearest Whole Foods too,
yeah,
but it's like
yeah,
when I
that's your
drive
vet.
into town, I'm like, "Oh, look, there's a vet's office right there." And then I'm like, "I don't wanna know where the vet's office is in this town. I don't wanna have to need the vet." And so then
Yeah.
I kind of put it out of my mind, but it is always in the back of my mind. I mean, there are little fur children, so we're always looking out for the best ways to care for them.
And there are a lot of resources out there, and you mentioned some. And my cat Mia, that passed away last year, she had kidney disease and some other things, but she also had to have subcutaneous fluids. And I was too, just I didn't want to do it myself. I was too anxious about doing that myself. So the website Rover, where a lot of people find cat and dog sitters, sometimes there are vet techs and vet students who are cat and dog sitting, but who have experience giving medications and doing things that involve needles like subcutaneous fluids.
Right.
So I actually had a I was fortunate living close to University of Tennessee right now that I was able to get a vet student to come to my place 3 days a week. So there's a lot of different places where you could source help if you actually need it.
That's a great idea. I wouldn't have even thought of that. That's an excellent idea. And we do have a vet of record in our home state, and so
Mm,
they do see her, when we're there, and we
yeah.
can ask her advice. And she can't telehealth us or anything, but there are some things that we can at least ask and get recommendations. Archie had a runny eye when we first got him, and she just gave us some ideas and then said, if this happens, you need to go immediately to an urgent care, or an emergency vet. And so we do have that relationship with our vet, that she's very helpful and friendly, and works with us. She's amazing. So
Now, speaking of Mr. Archie, and I've seen him in a couple of your YouTube videos, but you've mentioned that you adopted him while you were on the road. And I know adopting a kitten on the road can be an adventure. I mean, adopting a kitten when you're stationary in a home is an adventure because I just recently adopted 2 8-month-olds back in April. They're over 1 now. So tell us a little bit about adopting Archie on the road and what that experience was like for you.
absolutely. So we lost Murphy, and we weren't ready. And we had Eddie. And like I said, Eddie was 10. He probably didn't really need a little baby kitten brother, but we started to get ready. You kind of know. You get to a point where you're like, I think I want one. And we were talking about names, and we were talking about where we were going to adopt them. And we thought about getting one in North Carolina and naming it Rocky for the Rocky Mountains. And then that trip passed, and we moved on. And then we were in Utah, and I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we got like an orange cat and we named him Archie? For arches, right? If you know anything about Utah, their license plates literally Delicate Arch from Arches National Park. And so I just had this vision of this little orange cat laying on my blanket. I have a nice white blanket that I drink my tea, and I just had this vision of this little orange cat laying on my blanket. And I could see that he had these orange, like these dark orange stripes. And so I I was like, I'm gonna find this cat. So we're in Utah, Kanab, Utah, And that's home of Best Friends Animal Sanctuary. It's one of the biggest animal sanctuaries in the country. They are incredible. They had over 800 cats, and they have every species of animals. So I mean, there's no reason why we shouldn't have been able to find an orange cat that we could adopt. And we consulted our vet, and she suggested a 3-year-old, because a 3-year-old will be less troublesome, bothersome, pesky to Eddie. And so we went to the Best Friends, and we made an appointment, and we asked them to show us all the orange cats they had. So we spent a couple hours walking from cat house to cat house, like their space there is just incredible. And we're there, and we're letting cats play all over us. And I just couldn't find that orange cat that I saw. Like I just knew when I held him, I would know. And I was really disappointed. And I'm like, well, maybe it's not the right time. Maybe it will be Rocky, right? Because we were headed back to Rocky Mountain, or to Colorado eventually. Maybe it'll be Rocky instead of Archie, or maybe it'll be a different place in Utah. And so we go home, and we love on Eddie, and we're like, everything's fine. You're not getting a new brother today. We didn't find one. And we go out to dinner at a pizza place in Kanab. And I'm eating my pizza, and I'm telling this story like step by step because I think it's so important. I'm eating my pizza, and I look over, and there is a little girl holding an orange cat with stripes with this fluffy tail. And I'm like, oh, John, I think that's our cat. And there was a bunch of other people holding kittens too. And I put my pizza down, and I was like, John, that's my husband. You're going to have to excuse me. I need to go find out about these cats. So I put my pizza down. I march over. I'm taking videos, and I'm like, can you tell me about these cats? And she's like, yeah, these are kittens from Best Friends Animal Sanctuary. They didn't show us the kittens in the kitten room, or in one of the kitten rooms, and they're available for adoption. And I was like, okay, well, I think I want the orange one. I'm going to go convince my husband. I'll be right back. And I'm like, don't let this orange cat get taken by anybody. So I went back over, finished a piece of pizza. I was like, John, you need to come. We need to go. And so the waitress came over, and I said, can we get a box for a pizza? Can we get 2 desserts to go? And I'm like, left John to pay the tab. And I went over, and I just held Archie, and I'm just petting him. I'm like, do you want to come home with us? Do you want to be an Archie the Adventure Cat? And I've named him because I already knew his name was going to be Archie. And he was on a harness. And I was like, see, he already likes to be a cat. I handed him to John, and he's holding him. And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, I know, we didn't want a kitten. We wanted a 3-year-old. Well, anyway, obviously, we brought him home, and we tried to slowly introduce them. But in an RV, it's really, really hard. There just isn't space to keep them separate. And we really didn't want Eddie to feel isolated from the places that were already his, right? He already had full run of the house. It wasn't like we had a guest bedroom, and we don't have another bedroom. So Archie ended up spending the night, a few nights in the bathroom, so that we could keep them separate, so that they didn't. And ironically, we have a baby gate, so we could actually introduce them slowly, but we didn't want to leave Eddie where he was locked in the living room when we were in the bedroom or anything like that. So we introduced them slowly. Eddie tolerated him probably for about the first 6 months. It was a tolerance. It wasn't oh, you're my snuggly brother. We're going to do a cuddle puddle. It still is less, not cuddle puddle like Eddie was with Scooter and Murphy by any stretch of the imagination, but they will lay together. They'll sit next to each other. They'll look out the door. I mean, I have pictures of Archie as a tiny little fluff-tailed kitten looking out the door, standing next to Eddie. So they got along, but it was never the cuddle puddle that we were hoping. But bringing a kitten into any space is challenging. And if I were to do it again, we probably would change the dynamics of where we block them in, and how we maybe get a couple baby gates and leave one, and divide the kitchen or something like that, so that nobody was in a space that was, super lonely. It was good to have Archie in the bathroom at night because he slept. There wasn't much that he could get into. We did have a couple of issues. RVs have small spaces, and small kittens can get into small spaces that bigger cats didn't get into. And so we had a couple of instances where Archie ended up in the basement, and we had to take down a wall and get him out. And I mean, that's one of the things about, you asked me in the beginning, how do you keep them safe? It really is knowing your space enough to know where those small spots are. Like, are there places where, they can get that maybe you can't get to? As you walk up into the top of our fifth wheel, there's a couple of steps, and under the steps, there's an air return. And so both of all of the cats that we have, except Scooter, had gone into the basement from
Mhm.
that. Eddie had been in there, Murphy had been in there, and then Archie had gone down there, and now it's sealed with metal grate, so they can't get into the basement. But now they can go in there, and that's another hiding spot. So, that's one of the things with when you're introducing a pet into a small space, you really need to know the space. And that was one of the things when we asked the vet way back before we started traveling in the RV was what can we do to really make them feel at home? And his recommendation, our vet at the time said, make sure that they have places that they can hide where they feel safe. And so we have spots next to our bed. There are both little like cat beds in there and they can get in there. They have access to our closet. They have access to, beds along the walls that are kind of nooked in under things and behind things. And so they really have a lot of spaces that they can go that are safe, that make them feel, comfortable and make them feel good. So
Yeah, I love that story. I've actually been to Best Friends Animal Sanctuary to do some volunteer work. Yeah, incredible place.
it is incredible.
Yeah. So, how long have you had Archie now?
We've had Archie for just over a year.
A year.
So he's
Okay.
about 15, 16 months old.
Okay. So he's so my new cats were born in August of last year, so they are about 14 months old. So almost the same. They're like Archie seems like he's full grown now, and yeah.
He is full grown. I mean, I was looking at pictures of him when he was a tiny little kitten, and I'm
Mm.
thinking, he grew so fast. They grow so
Right.
fast.
Yeah. And I know cats are creatures of habits. Um, and I was thinking, like, well, how do they adapt to new environments as you travel to different locations? But your home is the same, right? You're just going to different locations and if they're not, so their litter box isn't moving, their feeding times and their everything you have kind of equipped in your RV, that's not changing. It's not like you're moving from house to house every year where they may have more trouble adapting to a new environment, right?
Definitely. And they know. So one of the things that we did is, and I don't know if they really know, but my brain says they know. We like command trained them. So we use the word house if they're outside, if they're if they're going towards the house, if they're in the truck. We don't off leash them, but we have had instances where Eddie has, we opened his carrier and he's out and he wants to run to the house. And because we tried that in the beginning was, can we make them so that they'll go from the RV to the truck without having to be in a carrier and then just get in their carrier in the truck? And Archie he'll go to the house and he'll go to the truck. Like those are some commands that we have. Eddie, as soon as you let him out of the truck, he beelines to the RV. Like they know where it's supposed to be. It's very cool to kind of watch them adapt. And then when I let them into the house after we've moved, our RV has slide outs. So we have to put the slide outs obviously before the cats come in. When we let them in, I make sure all the windows are open and then they just go from window to window. I mean, Eddie's laying in the window right now in the sun, looking out the window. I mean, he just loves the brightness and the windows and the access to the windows. I mean, there's windows here next to my desk, there's windows behind so they really just get into their space and it's like home.
Yeah. Yeah, and the cool thing is that just like for humans, you're getting different stimuli in terms of visual. You might go from one beautiful area to another. Cats love windows and they love to
Mhm.
look outside, and they're getting different stimuli as you go from place to place there. So when you're actually driving, where are Archie and Eddie?
So Archie and Eddie are in two separate carriers in the back seat of the pickup truck. So we have a
Okay.
pickup truck and we tow a fifth wheel camper, fifth wheel
Yeah.
RV. Um, I do know of people traveling with their pets left in the RV. We've read a lot of things about pinch points with the slide outs. When you're traveling down the road, the slides would be shifting up and down. So we just choose we put them in their carriers, we put them in the truck, then we bring the slides in. Um, and so they're never really in the RV when it's doing any kind of movement. We don't level the RV when they're in it. If we have to level the RV, we'll actually leash them and get them out, whether it's to put them in the truck or just to take them outside. We've really we want their home to feel as safe as possible. And so we don't move the RV when they're in it. And that way it just keeps it to be this safe place.
Hmm.
But that's with the nature of our cats. Archie probably wouldn't care, but Eddie is very skittish around things. And so moving the RV could be traumatizing to him. And so we're really cautious with that.
And when you're actually driving, how do they do? Did you ever have any trouble where they were stressed and anxious and had to give them, a calming medication or anything, or a spray or anything like that?
We haven't had to use that with any, now we've had 4 cats that we've traveled with. They've all kind of been okay. I think the first couple of trips were, just learning the ropes. So there was a little bit more crying then, a little bit more singing, as we call it. And then one of the things that we've actually noticed is some roads, the construction or the material that the road is made out of must create a different noise, because sometimes they'll be perfectly fine, everybody's quiet, laying, sleeping, resting, not even a peep, and then we cross over onto a different type of road and they cry. And
Hmm.
so we think that that's the assumption that we've made. The conclusion we've drawn is that the material that the road is makes a different road sound, which is not comforting to them. We haven't had any issues where they've been, so vocal that we were concerned. They usually calm down. We only travel about 3 to 3.5 hours per trip. So they're also not away from their litter box or food or water for very long. And so it's really, everything's really done for them. I
Hmm.
mean, our short trip started because when we had Scooter, he had, urinary issues that then led into this kidney disease. And so it was always short drives so that we could get him back to the litter box, because we didn't want him having to hold his urine for very long.
Yeah, and as it should be. Our lives and our worlds revolve around our cats, right? If they wanna eat
Exactly.
at 3 a.m., we get up.
Yeah, although that's one of the issues we've had with Archie lately, is he wants to play in the middle of the night. And so
Okay.
we've been working a lot
That's what
on.
Eddie's for.
I know, poor Eddie. He does get the brunt of it in the middle of the night, and he hates it. You hear him just a squealing out here, and then he comes in and lays on my pillow, and it's like, no, now you're gonna wrestle on my pillow. So we've been playing with Archie even more at night, because he is a kitten. He does have a lot of energy. He does want to play, but as I mentioned, he's really good going for walks and in the backpack, and so that stimuli exhausts him. I mean, he loves people. He will, if you're walking by and I have Archie on a leash and you say, "Oh, look, a kitty," his head tilts towards you and he's just waiting for you to call his name. So that's something we've also trained him, is that if people call his name, they're going to give him pets.
Mm,
And so he will go to, if you say Archie, he will come to you. So if
mm.
somebody's out there, I'm like, his name's Archie, call him. They'll say, "Archie, Archie, come here, kitty, kitty, come here, Archie." And he comes right to them. So I'm actually hoping he comes to me, but
Yeah.
it doesn't work as much when I call him.
Um, and because you said you drive, maybe 3 to 3.5 hours as long as, so the litter box and the cat dishes stay in the RV,
They
correct?
do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And
how is that with the litter in the RV and all that?
well, that's always fun, right? Because cats get litter everywhere. We scoop the litter twice a day so we don't have smells. And
Yeah.
then we also have a little broom and vacuum, and we just kind of sweep around it. The litter, a lot of people will put, because I'm not the only one that travels full time with my cats by any means. We see a lot of cats out in campgrounds now. But a lot of people will put the litter box in the shower. We just found that they made such a big mess that it's easier to just have it in the hallway and just sweep around them, throughout the day. And these two seem to be less messy than when we had 3. Murphy was really messy. I don't know what he did in there, if it was like his, playground or something, but his cat litter used to be flying everywhere with him. He's funny. And we have a so our litter box is top entry. So they actually jump in it. And so that also protects the area around it. And they're not going out through a flap, they're going out through the top. It's
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah, gotcha. So when you're stationary like you are now, are you typically in campgrounds, RV parks?
Campgrounds and RV parks, yes.
Okay.
We a lot rely on shore power. We don't have a generator or solar right now, so we rely on an electric pedestal, and
Okay.
um, yeah.
So no cats are very curious. How do Eddie and Archie react to just the different sights and sounds to the different places that you visit?
Oh, it's very cool. So they've seen, so our cats have been, well, Eddie's been to 33 states, same
Whoa.
as us, because he's been with us since we started. Archie, I think, is on state number 11, because we picked him up in Utah and then we've moved over. We're in Ohio now. And it's so fun to watch them because in some campgrounds, there's just squirrels everywhere. In other campgrounds, there's, songbirds. In other campgrounds, there's ducks. In Florida, there are iguanas. And so it's just so fun to watch them see and interact with the different animals through the windows. Because again, we don't really, I mean, they go outside, but Archie's going to be interesting around the iguanas in Florida
Mhm.
because he is such a, so much more willing to walk with us on a leash away from the camper. But Eddie likes to watch them from the windows.
Yeah. Does now that you have Archie and he loves the outdoors, does Eddie get into the outdoors more? Is he kind of getting a little bit more adventurous?
He does, and he wants to be adventurous, but he's just so scared of other people and
Mhm.
noises. He really doesn't like the big diesel trucks, which we're guilty of that. We have a diesel truck too. He doesn't like it if somebody approaches the camper. He just gets more skittish around people. We don't know why. We've had him since he was a kitten too, but he's always been a little bit less. The pet sitter wouldn't see him until she'd sat there for a little while. He'd finally peek his head out, whereas the other two would have come when they were called. But he will sit at the door and ask to go out. He will, if we have a private site or a site that doesn't have somebody right next to us, he will venture out. He'll sit out there with us. We have cat beds that go outside. We have extra chairs that they can sit in because of course we do have things for our cats to sit in outside. And so he'll come out and sit for a while, but then if there's a loud kids yelling or people walking by a lot, he just gets nervous and goes inside, and then he'll sit in the window and watch us, and then he'll beg to come out, and then it'll be like another cycle of doing it all over again.
Yeah. How do you handle outdoor safety in an unfamiliar place? Like when I open my apartment, I'm scared that my cats will run out. And I know Eddie's more skittish, so maybe Archie needs to be watched a little bit more with outdoor safety. But how do you handle that in a environment maybe you're not as familiar with what's out there yourselves?
Yeah, we're really cautious, probably overly cautious.
Mm.
We, off leash dogs are a real issue. Murphy had an interaction with an off leash dog. Luckily, nobody got injured, but you just don't know. And so we're really cautious with dogs, really cautious with off leash dogs. The campground we're in right now, the neighbors let their dogs off leash. So we haven't taken our cats out much. If Archie goes out, we've got him close on a leash. We have his backpack. He knows that his backpack is his safe place. So we'll put him in the backpack if we see somebody with an off leash dog, or if we're walking by a larger dog. Archie's really curious about dogs, which makes me even more nervous because I'm afraid he'll then want to go towards them. And so we're extra cautious. And then when our screen doors open, so this is probably not a fire safety thing. So do not do as I do. But we have the way that the RV latches the door on is like the handrail folds in. And so we just fold the handrail in to make sure that the screen door doesn't open, because he knows how to push the little button, the little latch to let open the door. So he can let himself out. And so we had to have another level of precaution to make sure that he didn't just let himself out the screen door and now he's outside and we're inside, because he is so smart. He would do something like that.
Yes.
Little Archie.
Cats are smart. Is there any other gear or setup you use in your RV that maybe we haven't talked about to make your life more cat friendly on the road? Any must haves?
Some things that we really think are that have made their life better on the
Mhm.
road is a cat tower that sits right up against to the height of the windows so that they
Mhm.
can sit in it and see out. The backpack has been a huge Like, that's been a huge addition. We did not have that with Scooter or Murphy or Eddie. And honestly, I don't know that Scooter or Murphy or Eddie would really enjoy riding in it, but Archie really does. He'll sit in it and look out the back flap. He'll climb, if you open the top, he'll climb up and kind of perch on the top of it and peek over your shoulder while you're walking. I mean, that's really enhanced his ability to kind of explore and feel safe. Um, we have lots of toys. I mean, of course we do, but just having toys that we can throw around. Now, in our situation, our toys are a little bit bigger because we don't want them to get under our slide out. So there's like just those little things that you want to think about in when you're thinking about, a new space for your pets. Like if your toys get under the oven or the stove, you just move it. If our toys get under the slide out, sometimes we find them outside. Like
Mm.
John came in one day and he's like, "Our ball is outside." It must have, as we put the slide out at the new campground, the ball must have been stuck under it and popped out. So just things like that. And then I was telling you earlier, we have cat treats. I was hoping I'd get a cat to come. Come here, kitty, kitty.
Yeah,
Come
come
on.
on, guys. Are you
Yeah.
hungry?
Normally they're like all in this
Yeah.
space trying to look out the window. Like they love their treats. I don't know why they won't come. Come here, buddy. He's like, "You want me to come?" See, there's
And
6
then guess
cats.
what, Kathy? As soon as we end this, they'll come from the street.
For sure,
Um,
for sure.
any advice for cat parents who are considering taking their first road trip with their cats? Not necessarily like living the RV lifestyle like you and your husband are, but maybe just wanting to get their cats, more comfortable in the car and be able to take them to a local campground, perhaps. What would you say for those folks?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, I would suggest putting the carrier out as a bed, like really just incorporating it into their, their everyday routine. The other thing is wherever you're taking the cat, make it cat friendly. So we actually just road tripped with Archie and Eddie to my in-laws. We stayed at their house in one of their spare bedrooms, and we made that cat friendly. We brought their toy our we brought toys from home for them. We brought scratchers, we brought their bed, they had their carriers as beds. I had a blanket with me, my shirt, and so whenever we left them in the room, we had our stuff that they could sleep in. And I can't tell you how many times I went in, especially when Archie was getting a rest, because he was social, so he wanted to be out where everybody else was, whereas Eddie was like, "Nope, I'm good under the bed," and he would come out when John and I were in there. But whenever I went in, Archie was laying sprawled out on my sweatshirt or on my pillow, like something that smelled like me. So if you
Mm.
are planning to take your pets, somewhere, maybe have a bed that you take with you in the camper with you, or you have a blanket that you bring with you. This isn't the first time we've traveled with cats. When we moved from Charlotte, North Carolina to Pittsburgh, we had to stay in a pet friendly hotel with our cats, and so just now I feel like I would be even more equipped to be able to say, okay, they're going to want their bed. They're going to want their familiar things. Maybe it's a towel, maybe it's a some toys that you can play with, their litter box, having those things that smell the same and that are theirs makes them feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's a big, and I've actually been leaving my carriers. I mean, they're packed away now, but I'll leave my carriers out from time to time for my new cats, and they'll go in like you mentioned and
Yeah.
sleep in there or hang out. My two previous cats, no way, you get those things out, and they're like under the
Under
bed.
the bed. Yeah, exactly. But ours love it. And even
Yeah,
when we had Scooter and Murphy, they loved their carriers out, even though in the house they wouldn't go anywhere near the carrier. And so it just shows you kind of the more familiar it becomes, the easier it is to transport them.
yeah. People might be wondering, like, when you go to a different RV park or campground. Is there anything you're looking for specifically that makes them more cat friendly, if you will, or pet friendly, or anything you and your husband are looking for, just to kind of rule out one campground but makes another campground more attractive?
So this is I'm going to relay this in terms of how we kind of operate right now. So typically when we're looking at campgrounds that are going to, allow us to live the lifestyle that we live. We work remotely Monday through Friday. We explore on the weekends. So oftentimes we'll stay in a campground for 2 weeks or a month, depending. And so we're looking for places that, where we can feel like we can live our lifestyle. It has a nice outdoor space, things like that. When we're at a campground, we also will walk around and we'll look at, if we were to come back here, which of these sites would be even better than the site we're in now.
Mm.
And I think that the things that we're looking for in that instance, because once you're at the campground, you can be like, oh yeah, like the site we're in right now is awesome, but the patio is a little bit small and it's very open, which means when Eddie's out there, he's extra edgy. And then, of course, like I said, the neighbors don't leash their dog. And so the dogs will come over here. And so we're less likely to sit outside. So those are, even though the rule is that they have to leash their dog. And I know we're going to get comments. And if this is you, feel free to comment that I should have told on them and I should have asked them to leash their dog. I know. We're here for a month and they're here for probably longer than that. And I didn't want to be that person. So I just not hung out outside much with Eddie. But at one of the campgrounds we were in a few months ago, it was amazing. We had these beautiful hedges around the patio. And so Eddie would just sit out there. And he was by himself last summer before we got Archie, and we were in a campground and there was nobody there. Probably because it was like in Utah and it was 100 degrees before we got Archie in the middle of August. And so nobody else was out there camping, but we were like, hey, this is fine. This is great. There's nobody. And so Eddie walked all around the campground with us. He was outside every night after work with us. I mean, and so that's also something, can we be in a place on shoulder season when it's a quieter campground and maybe there aren't as many people and there isn't much traffic?
Yeah, awesome. I don't know, people who are watching this or listening might be curious, like, how does Kathy and her husband get to live this lifestyle? Like, even if we don't have a cat, it sounds like a great lifestyle, just living on the road. And I know it's there's a lot of challenges that I'm sure you have, but what do you actually do that affords you to be able to travel and live this lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. So I run my own business. I'm a plant-based lifestyle and mindset coach. I help people go plant-based. I'm
Nice.
also a recipe developer and cookbook author. I've authored 3 cookbooks. And then my husband works for a software company in IT. So has a remote job. We pitched his job that we could work real remote and they said yes. And so we went on the road and that was 6 years ago.
Nice.
I would say that the highlights and the benefits of this lifestyle do outweigh the challenges, but there are challenges. Right now, our truck is in the shop getting a couple of repairs. They're just minor, but they've had it for 10 days. We have a rental, kind of makes you like, I'd like my truck back. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like those little things. I mean, but that could happen in a house. Your vehicle could need repairs and you would have to have a rental. Like these are things that you would experience in a house. We just experience it differently,
Mm.
right? Like we had our water system needed a repair and we had to wait for the part. And so we didn't have water, but the campground had water. Like you know what I mean? Like you would experience it. It just feels different in an RV when you're traveling and you're not in your family. Like it wasn't like I could just, ask a friend or family to pick us up at the car dealer. No, we had to get a rental because we don't know anybody here. And so
Mm.
it's those little challenges like that kind of that you do kind of notice every now and then. But my gosh, like I said, we've been to 33 states, over 25 national parks. I mean, we really do feel fortunate and as if we're living the dream.
Do you have a favorite place you've traveled to?
That's one of the hardest questions
Oh,
ever.
yeah.
So I personally really love Maine. I grew up in Western New York, lived in Charlotte, lived in Pittsburgh. I really love Maine. And then I love mountain time zone, like any state in mountain
Oh,
time
yeah.
zone,
Yeah.
Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah. I mean, I love them all. I love the mountains. It really has been that those parts of our trips are really amazing. And again, why we would get a cat and name him Rocky because we love that. And
That's right.
it's not off the table. Every now and then we're like, we should really get Rocky. He would
Yeah.
make a great addition to this little national park family over here.
Yeah.
So
Get a third
you
one
never
and then
know.
come back on the Cat Dad show.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually moved to Tennessee from Colorado. So yeah, just love the Rocky Mountains. You glossed over a little bit, but I know you said part of what you do is a mindset coach. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I'm just curious, kind of myself, and what type of clients you work with.
Absolutely. So I've been studying mindset for over 12 years and it
Mm.
really is helping people figure out how to use the way that they think and the way that they talk to make things happen in their life. And that sounds a lot woo woo when I say it out loud. But when I'm working specifically with my plant based clients, I'm really looking at, are you thinking things? Do you have beliefs that are holding you to your old habits? And some
Mm,
of those beliefs, especially when you're transitioning to a new way of eating, might be that you need to eat certain things. Like, or we can take it outside of eating. That's typically, those are the clients that I typically work with. But like, let's say you want to hit the road in an RV,
yeah.
but your mindset is, I can't do that because.
Mm,
Well, instead, let's switch that. What are all the ways? Why are all the reasons you could do it? Like,
yeah.
just changing, just shifting the way that you think about things. And that's really where I start with mindset is, what are you currently thinking? Where are you right now? And where do you want to go? And what do we need to do to close that gap?
Yeah. Love that. Thanks for sharing. That's awesome.
Sure.
And then where can we find out more about your work that you're doing in the plant-based lifestyle, either websites or social media? And then I know your cats have Instagram, so
They
lay
do.
it on us.
All right. So if you want to learn more about me, you can find me at Veg Inspired on Instagram. That's the best place. I manage my own Instagram. I don't have a social media manager. It's me. So if you have any questions about eating more plants or plant based or even RV life, feel free to connect with me over there. And then the cats have an Instagram. It's We Are Camper Cats.
Love
And you can see pictures of Murphy and Scooter. They're on there as well. We kept them. They're part of the family. And
it.
then Eddie and Archie also make frequent appearances on We Are Camper Cats Instagram. So
I love it. Well, I'll link everything up in the show notes. Kathy, thank you so much for being an amazing guest and talking. I know you're used to probably talking about the plant-based lifestyle, so this will give you a little bit of a different feel for this interview. But thank you for being such an amazing guest. I wanted to see Archie and Eddie. I'm sure they're going to come after those treats as soon as we stop recording. But thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate that.
absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Scott. This was such a great conversation, and I just love what you're doing and honoring your Mia and
Nomar.
Nomar.
Nomar was the other
Yes,
one. Yeah. Thank
yes.
you. I
You're
appreciate that.
welcome.
Yeah. Everybody watching, thank you for watching this episode of the Cat Dad Show, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.